So clear now. That was why he dreamt this moment, not the calm before the storm as he had always thought. It was the moment young Charlie Walker saw death in his mother's eyes. Saw the very instant the revolution in her cells erupted as the cancer was born. The battle for her life thereafter would be swift and decisive. She would be dead mere months later, and Charlie had seen it all begin. A long since buried memory he had been trying to suppress ever since. But it had taken a dark soul like Randall's to bring it to shattering life. He opened his eyes again, but already the scene was beginning to fade. Revelation is a wonderful thing, Charlie vaguely heard Randall say as he was swallowed up once more by the darkness. And this time he was thankful for it. Sweet oblivion, the part of Charlie that had been ravaged by Randall's so-called revelation didn't want the darkness to ever end. Just relax now, Charlie, remember this is all just a dream. This time he heard the words as clear as day, spoken by his tormentor not inside his head but somewhere close in the void, just as he could hear his own ragged breathing. Just a dream, he said. In time the black became gray and the gray melted back into the relative reality of the hotel room. There was a moment of disorientation, then as senses gradually returned he realized he was still laid on the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. He swung his legs and sat up to see Randall sitting in the chair opposite. "Fuck," was all he could say. "How could you have known?" Randall asked softly, leaning forward so the meager light from the window caught his face again. "How could you have known that was the moment your mother got cancer?" Charlie rubbed his throbbing temples, his head was pounding so hard it felt ready to split clean in two. "I couldn't have." "Yet you did." "For fuck's sake, no." Charlie got to his feet and turned away from Randall. He moved over to the window and pushed the curtains aside. Dawn was still some way off, and with it any hope of an end to this nightmare. "And you know something else?" Randall continued behind him. Charlie heard him stand and move closer. At that moment he gave half a thought to jumping straight out of the window, anything to avoid more of his questions. "Please," he pleaded, but Randall would not be silenced. "You've seen it again. Haven't you?" The pavement, 3 floors down, was looking more and more inviting to Charlie. "That exact same look," Randall continued, his voice little more than a whisper, he no more than 3 feet from Charlie now. "This time in your dad." Charlie suddenly felt faint, he had to rest his hands on the cold window pane. "Call me a liar." "Fuck it." Charlie thought and swung out an elbow to smack the Yank square in the face, and to hell with the consequences, but even though he was sure Randall was directly behind him, his blow failed to connect with anything but thin air. He turned around, ready to dodge any counterattack, but was shocked to see Randall was still sitting in the chair, his features half masked by shadow with a look of mild amusement on his dimly lit face. "For God's sake." Charlie's shoulders sagged as the last of his energy drained out of him. "I can't take this anymore. If I'm asleep, for Christ's sakes just let me sleep. You know deep down your dad is going to die in that hospital." Randall finally got to his feet. Close to collapse as he was, Charlie wasn't going to take his eyes off him as time as he spoke, so he knew exactly where he was. "You saw it, didn't you?" Randall insisted. That look in his eyes. "That's why you don't like visiting him. That's the real reason you can't tell him you're not an estate agent." "How?" Charlie's voice trailed off. No need to ask how he knew everything, even his darkest dreams and what they meant. "I know you," Randall said, and slowly began to move around the sofa and over to where Charlie was standing. Charlie instinctively moved away, matching him step for step to keep his distance. "And what would you say, if I told you I could stop it happening?" "I'd say you were full of shit," Charlie spat back at him. Lesson number 1, Charlie. The world is not quite as you thought it was. Some of us can change things. Inevitable things. "I don't believe you." Charlie gave a start as he felt his back touch the wall. He was quite literally cornered. "I can help you, Charlie." The tone of Randall's voice was seduction itself wrapped in the darkness of the room. "Or help you help yourself." "Why would you?" Charlie was lightheaded, he felt like he was floating, he glanced at his feet just to make sure they were still on the floor. "Maybe I'm an angel," Randall said, and stopped 3 feet from Charlie. "Well, are you?" "Of sorts, I guess," Randall said with a shrug. "Just not in the conventional sense." He paused, thinking, then added, "I'm kind of a dark angel." He nodded to himself. Randall liked the sound of that. Charlie slid down the wall until his backside hit the carpet. "Christ, I'm so tired." All he wanted to do now was sleep, or die, either would be better than this state of tormented limbo halfway between both. Neither came, so tears would have to do for now. Randall looked down at Charlie as he wept. There was no doubt he felt something in the kid, that spark for want of a better word. He had undoubted potential, but Randall knew now wasn't the time or place, or even if he could unlock that potential given a chance. But more than that, he finally realized why it was he had come here tonight, to drag the kid through an emotional blender. Not to recruit him, or even to cause him casual cruelty, which under normal circumstances would have been reason enough. It was to find in him that moment, the one Randall had searched so hard and so far in vain to find in his own past. That forgotten catalyst that had started him on this wild and surreal ride he was on. On many occasions Randall had doubted there was one, but this was vindication that his search wasn't folly. Charlie had one, a look, and the knowledge of what lay behind it was all it had taken. So somewhere, deep down, Randall had his, lost for now in the darkest recesses of his mind, but one day, even if it took to the end of time itself, he would find it, and with it would come a meaning to all this, of that he was sure. Randall. The collector felt Israel enter the room behind him a split second before he spoke, which gave him just enough time to picture him once more as Sherlock Holmes in a cheap Halloween mask. He turned around and sure enough there stood the famous detective. Israel took a step, then looked down at himself and gave a sign of dismay that Randall knew he would never tire of. Really? The demon said. Are we still doing this? You know you like it, Randall replied. Besides, he thought he always found it much easier than trying to concentrate on that floating heat haze form Israel favored if left to his own devices. What are you doing here? Israel asked, nodding towards the prone Charlie. I thought you were leaving this one alone? As Israel spoke, Charlie suddenly cursed. Fuck. He grasped his head, his face a mask of pain. What was that? Both Randall and Israel turned to Charlie in astonishment. You heard that? Randall asked. Impossible. Israel dismissed. Ow, fuck. Charlie winced in pain again. There it was again. What the hell was that? He held his head as if it was going to split open. What did you hear? Randall asked. Something. Charlie let out a sharp breath. He tried to make sense of what he had heard. It was almost a feeling more than a sound. Sounded like. Hard to describe. Felt more like, Christ I dunno. Felt like nails down a fucking blackboard. That was close enough. Nails scraped down a blackboard but heard through a 1,000-watt speaker stack. Interesting. Proof positive Randall was right about Charlie. Randall. Israel fidgeted behind Randall, clearly not happy about this latest turn of events. He was about to speak again, but Randall silenced him with the wave of a hand as Charlie flinched again. Nails down a blackboard? Couldn't have put it better myself, Randall agreed. Yeah, Charlie said weakly, his face slick with sweat. He was so exhausted now he could barely speak. He looked fit to pass out from the pain Israel's words were causing him. Pass out or worse, after all his heart was only human. Except, Charlie continued with great effort. Sounds mad, but I could have sworn I almost heard. He shook his head in disbelief, but still added. Words. I knew it, Randall exclaimed with a clap of the hands. He spun around to Israel, who was shifting nervously from one foot to the other. I knew I was right about this one. He can hear you. This is going too far, Collector, Israel said, putting his hands on his hips rather camply. Even for you. I can tell you've shown this one too much already. Kill him and let us be gone. Jesus, Charlie yelled. There it is again. Christ, make it stop. He tried to push himself up against the wall, but halfway between sitting and standing his legs turned to jelly and he slid back down. Sounds like a voice. He scanned the darkened room for any sign of the phantom speaker but could find no one else. He looked up at Randall with bloodshot eyes. What's this? He said bitterly through gritted teeth. Another mind fuck, Randall? No, not this time. Randall replied. This one's quite real. Well, I say real. Randall, don't you? Israel warned but was cut off mid-threat. Charlie Walker, meet Israel. Israel, meet. Enough. Israel's voice exploded out of his comic form with real power this time, even laced with emotion, rage. And Randall knew he had crossed the line. He even thought for a brief moment the exclamation had made the floor vibrate beneath his feet. The sheer force of Israel's voice may have startled Randall, but it damn near killed Charlie. He screamed in pain and covered his ears in a vain attempt to block out the cacophony. Mental note, mused Randall. Don't push the little shit too far. If he could ever actually influence the outside world, you will never hear the last of it. Okay, he said, holding out his hands in surrender. That would be my bad, as the kids say. The demon pointed a bony finger at Randall. You do not mention my name in the presence of the likes of his kind. Okay, take it easy, Holmes, Randall said, and was thankful whatever effect Israel seemed to have on the real world had passed. Israel turned his masked face to the cowering Charlie, who was curled up in a ball now, all sanity seemingly gone. He was shaking his head and muttering incoherently to himself. The other one has led me to Whitaker, the demon said. I have no doubt we can find McCulloch through him. Enough of your games, Randall. We no longer need this one. Kill him and the other when he returns. Death sentence given. Ishral turned away. Shame, Randall lamented and knelt next to the shivering young man. I could have taught this one. No you couldn't, Ishral said without turning back. It is not your place, or mine for that matter, to choose or train potential collectors. Now get on with it. Make it quick or slow, it's your choice. Ha, too kind, Randall said, but he had already made up his mind what he was going to do. And it had surprised and disturbed him in equal measure. Charlie flinched slightly as Randall gently pressed his hand on the back of his head, just at the base of the skull as he had done before. Randall bent close to the trembling man's ear. Remember Charlie, he whispered. It's all just a bad dream. Stupid, stupid, stupid. The further he got away from Tommy Whitaker's madness, the more Bill Fraker cursed himself for the way he had reacted. He was just thankful Charlie or any of the other boys had not been there to witness him stumbling away from the place like a scared teenager. So unprofessional. Now he was in the familiar territory of his own car. He was just plain embarrassed about it all. Fraker pulled the car into a parking space in the hotel's underground car park and switched off the engine. Then he just sat there contemplating his next move. He kept going back to the lawyer. It was as if he was radiating fear, and at the time Fraker had got a damn good dose of it, but now that he was away from him he could look at the whole situation through a calm, collected, rational eye. Whitaker was a grade A nut job, you could take that to the bank, but the real question was, why? Was he simply a man driven out of his mind through fear for his life? That was understandable and above all, which Fraker liked, a perfectly normal reaction. Or was it as the man himself had put it, through the fear for his very soul? No, for Christ's sake, that was just bollocks. Wasn't it? The Yank was a hit man, nothing more. But in the end, did it really matter? He had to get Charlie and get out of all this, and he was sure in a couple of days he would be able to laugh about all this heaven and hell shit Whitaker was spouting, and it would make a great anecdote to bore the boys with the admittance of his stumbling Exeter course. First things first, he would have to slip the phone number Whitaker had given him under Randall's door and then get Charlie and get out, preferably without bumping into the Yank. That was a conversation he didn't want, just in case. Again, he would laugh about this later. There was some truth in Whitaker's ramblings. Besides, he had no reason to come after them, not with Whitaker in the bag. Fraker and Charlie weren't important in all this. Sure, they were on the edge of something big, something weird, but it was like Whitaker had put it, it wasn't too late for them to get out of this unscathed, untainted. Fraker got a flash of the fear in Whitaker's eyes at the word, and it sent a chill down his spine. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Fraker smacked his leg and told himself to get a grip, then got out of the car. He cursed himself not for the first time tonight, but put it down to tiredness this time. It was nearly 4 in the morning and the car park was deathly quiet except for his footfalls as he made his way past the rows of outrageously expensive cars and over to the car park's lift at the far end. Just a few more minutes now and he would be dragging Charlie back down here and the two of them could get gone and leave Randall to it.